Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Shinobi Nando, and today I'm reviewing Evil West. Now, I want to begin the review by thanking Focus Entertainment for very kindly providing me with a review code in advance. As I'm sure, like many of you, I was excited when I saw the gameplay of this game. It really reminded me of things like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, but with vampires in an old Western setting. And while the gameplay is really fun like those games, the story is a bit lacking. In Evil West, we play as vampire hunting cowboy Jesse Rentier. Jesse is part of the Rentier Institution, and yes, it does share his last name, as your father William is not only the leader of the Institute, which kind of functions like this secret service established by the United States government to keep things like monsters and vampires at bay. He's also the primary creator of a lot of the Rentier Institution's technology, including your signature gauntlet. And the reason for the Secret Service is humanity has long been at war in the shadows with vampires. And if that sounds painfully generic and sounds like almost every vampire movie you've ever watched, it kind of is. I want to stress as well, if you're a fan of vampire movies and games in general, this is very much more Van Helsing starring Hugh Jackman or Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter than it is something like Blade or Dracula. Just like in those movies, the story is serviceable, but it's more the world building and the lore that was much more interesting to me. One primary deviation from most other vampire media is that humans are actually winning the war. We're turning the tide. This is in no small part to the inventions and gadgets and steampunk weaponry that you use. Interestingly, this is actually the primary catalyst for the turn of events in the story. One of the noble vampire houses is concerned by this, by the turn of the century technology that humanity now has access to and is using to help them basically one up and turn the tide on vampires. He presents this issue to the Vampire Council, who in typical faction tell him that, they want to remain in the shadows, they prefer to feed on humanity in secret, and don't want to go into open war. You go to stop this vampire lord, which in turn proves his point, and leads to the vampires uniting, attacking the Institute, on the day that your father's revealing his new crown achievement, a gauntlet that will finally allow humans to see past glamour, an ability that vampires have had in multiple media that allows them to hypnotize or create illusions. Events ensue, and now it is up to us to not only stop the vampires' rising tide now that they're semi-united, but also rebuild the institution from the ground up. As I said, the story was okay. It felt very much like I was going through the motions. I was much more interested in picking up the various journals and logs around so I could find out more about this, the world that we're in.
We are a unique species, brothers and sisters. We are not bred. We are not born. We come to life when we accept the gift of change. Our powers are many, and they have served us well. The art of glamour has given us safety through secrecy, but I am afraid we are becoming the victims of progress. Sooner or later, human technology will find a way to see past our illusions. They will expose and demonize us and make us their ultimate enemy. Inevitably, we will become their inferiors.
It does do a very Assassin's Creed thing as well, where it kind of interjects vampires into history. Also, again, is very much like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Officially, they called it a cholera epidemic, but truth was they were dealing with a terrible outbreak of amateur necromancy. The entire Institute was engaged in the hunt.
But the coolest part about this game is the steampunk weaponry. The gameplay of Evil West is very, very similar once again to games like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry. You go through areas where you need to platform or explore while picking up collectibles and consumables, and eventually you will transition to wide open combat arenas where you fight hordes of vampires. Now, Evil West has this system where there are gold chains or silver chains glowing, which is kind of hand-holding to be fair, but it does allow you to know when you are going to transition into a combat area. While I do see how some people are going to complain about this, as this is obviously a gimmick to hide loading screens, it also might feel a bit patronizing, stating that you might not know which way to go. It does allow you to go around and mop up all the collectibles. While this is a cowboy themed game, which means you probably think that you'd be engaging vampires with like a 6-shooter or a sawed-off shotgun, and those do exist, combat in this game is primarily using your melee weapon, your gauntlet. Now, Evil West lacks a combo system like those other games I keep on comparing it to. But you do have a wide variety of tools available to you, which meant that combat never got dull, with more becoming available to you as you would progress and unlock them. You could do things like upgrade your gauntlet to overcharge your nervous system and allow you to do a quick dash dodge. You could do things like uppercut enemies into the air and then juggle them with your pistol just to follow up with a lightning attack. There are so many options here, from flamethrowers, grenades, an electrified cross, and in true video game fashion, you can unlock more as you progress through the game, either via the coin system, which allows you to use money to upgrade your weapons on the fly, or via the level up system where you gain perks that you can unlock new abilities or upgraded ones. Now, I don't know why they chose to separate the two. It could have been easy enough just to have the money currency, much like Red Orbs and Devil May Cry, as a singular upgrade system, but I think they wanted to stagger progression because this game is ridiculously easy. While it keeps combat fresh, you have so many ways of defeating enemies. I rarely found myself in danger. In fact, I think I only died a couple of times because I stayed up too late and was a bit too tired. Even boss battles are ridiculously easy, and I probably should have played this game on a higher difficulty. There's also co-op, while fun, isn't really properly balanced. Even though the game mentions that there will be more enemies with more health, me and my combat partner were absolutely melting some of the bosses in the game. I mean, melting, like in a matter of seconds. It was almost like bullying.
Stop! He's already dead!
Also, a weird choice of the game is that you have no co-op progression if you're the second player, nor does anything carry over to your own single player file. So you can't go into a co-op game as the second player and, let's say, get some more cash or experience and level up your character that way. You simply mimic the upgrades that your partner has, that the first player has. You also gain nothing from playing in co-op, even if you unlock the very limited amount of customization choices there are. That doesn't carry over again into your single player file. Other than some fun absolutely bullying the enemies in the game, I really don't see the point of playing on co-op. While Nate and I do fully intend to do a co-op run on the hardest difficulty once we both leveled up and beaten the game, it's really disappointing that there's nothing unlockable or nothing new in co-op. You literally just play as a clone of Jesse. Speaking of bosses, when I wasn't absolutely bullying them in co-op, they are for the most part pretty fun. Because of the weird and unique take on vampirism in this game involving leeches, there are some pretty cool bosses you get to fight. Now, some of the mini bosses did get repetitive, as at first they appeared as a level boss and then came in groups of 3 and 4 in normal combat. Again, this game was so easy that it was just a minor annoyance. Overall, the combat is by far the best part of the game. It is so fun, dynamic, and interesting. It's super flashy, even though it's a cowboy game. The graphic style of this game teeters the line of, is that a stylistic choice or something gone wrong? I couldn't tell if the game looks dated, as some of the environments and backgrounds are absolutely gorgeous and look really, really cool, as well as a lot of the effects. A lot of time in the cutscenes, the graphics seem to take a hit, and the faces of the characters kind of look last gen. Again, the more I played it and looked at them, I didn't know if this was a limitation of the engine they were using or the development team size, or if this was a genuine stylistic choice. In terms of in combat or in gameplay, the graphics are fine. They do not hinder you in any way. As I've already mentioned, the combat looks super cool and fluid. The only minor annoyance I have is it relies on that trope of everything kind of being a browny red orangey kind of color. I get that they're vampires and it's blood, but still, even to the point when they attack you, the leeches on their body or just their appendages in general glow this really, really weird orange. Again, I know it's part of the telegraphing. I just found it a bit too much and made the gameplay too easy. It was too much of a tell. Other than that though, again, in gameplay, the graphics are great. The environments are detailed and varied. There's actually quite a lot of variation. Considering this is set in the Wild West, you would have thought that they would have been really restricted with like the kind of desert setting, but no, you go to quite a few locations. The monster design, again, for me anyways, borders the kind of cool when it came to the bosses, to kind of silly and weird. Now, I've never really been a fan of that ghoul style vampire that you have in certain shows and media, like Priest, you know, the kind of like zombie vampire type things. Don't get me wrong, some of the main vampires in the game are exactly what you would think when you think vampires, but then they do that thing where they transform into like a giant bat creature, and it's, I don't know, it's not for me. It didn't ruin the game. It just, like I said, when I saw them, especially with the whole leech motif, I was like, oh, okay, I'm just kind of finding monsters and not really finding vampires. Yeah, I don't really have a cool transition into this one because I don't really have a lot to say. The audio in this game is fine. It has your generic Western kind of tones in the background. The monster sounds weren't anything terrifying. This isn't really a survival horror game. This is a horror action game at best. The voice acting ranges from good to kind of weird and cheesy. There was one standout performance for me, and that was the kind of Irish vampire at the very beginning of the game.
Belmontville Mines, huh? Oh, we're gonna be walking blind into a damn maze.
And if our tick friend here is telling the truth, DeBono's gonna be right in the middle of it.
I don't think I'm in a position to lie, do you?
That's the spirit, Chester. Now you lift those fancy illusions, and who knows? Maybe you'll make it out of this after all.
The glamour! Even I have my limitations, Mr. Gravener.
You want a limitation? How about walking around without a head?
He was kind of funny, made me chuckle a little bit. Other than that, the dialogue, I don't really think it's the voice actor's fault. As I just hesitated there with the dialogue. Dialogue is okay, like the rest of the story. There is one annoying character. Her voice really, really goes through me, and I hated it. I hate that trope of kind of like the giggling little girl in a horror setting where audio was a bit of a negative for me. Plus I had an audio glitch where it just kept on doing the kind of fizzling pop sound that some of the exploding leech characters would have. That stuck around for half an hour. I had to just take my headset off at that point. Now a little tidbit bringing us to our final verdict. This game did have some glitches, not very many. In fact, it was a pretty smooth ride considering it was early access. The two game-breaking bugs that we experienced, both Nate and I, was number one, he got stuck in a level. He couldn't progress. He hasn't actually beaten the game because you're supposed to get to a point where you, I'm just going to say, blow up something, and no matter what he did, it just won't blow up, reloading his save, anything like that. So he's kind of stuck. We're going to try to fix that with co-op. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that gets patched pretty soon. And the second one for me was the audio bugs that I sometimes experience, where if I killed an enemy mid-attack, the sound, and at first I didn't really notice it. I thought it was part of the background, and then that last one I described, that was horrendous. That nearly drove me insane. But again, overall for early access, pretty smooth ride. And the game as a whole, I really enjoyed. I actually had a ton of fun. Now the game's about 10 to 15 hours depending on your skill level. You could probably do it a lot faster in co-op, I won't lie. Would suggest that if you are experienced with games like Devil May Cry, definitely turn up the difficulty if you want a challenge. But yeah, if I had to rate this game, I'd probably give it a silver star, which for me means either wait for a sale or wait for it to go on Game Pass. Now, that's not me saying that Game Pass is some kind of thing that we just, or service we just shove mediocre games on. This game's not mediocre. What I'm saying is, if you see it on Game Pass, even if you weren't kind of thinking about playing it, I'd give it a go, because it is really fun and it might introduce you to these the genre of action horror games. All I can say is I had fun with this game. I genuinely had a good time playing it. I want to do another playthrough. I want to do co-op, despite the fact that co-op has no progression. What more can you say? Again, I don't think I could recommend this at full price, but if you see it on sale or it comes on Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, definitely recommend downloading it. Right, guys, that has been my review for The Evil West. Thank you so much for making it to the end if you've made it here. If you have, give this video a like. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Again, despite my problems, I'm going to replay it, and I would even love to see a sequel of it. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you've been looking forward to this, if you've been on the fence, have I convinced you to pick it up or wait? And don't forget to subscribe, because I'll be doing more reviews, more collector's editions unboxings, more skits, and more what's in the box videos. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to make a cool outro. It's not working.